I'm Mirka and I'm part of BookOrators, a global student organization that aims to instill a love for literature in youth. As part of our guest speaker series, we are joined by Miss Carly Heath, who is an author. Her debut novel, The Reckless Kind, was recently released, and so we wanted to share her experiences and journey to becoming a published author. We are so excited to have you here today to talk to us, Miss Heath.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Mirka. I really appreciate it. And it's been so nice talking to you. My debut novel is The Reckless Kind. It's about three queer misfit teens in 1904 Scandinavia, in a fictional Scandinavian country that's kind of a lot like Norway. And they defy the expectations of their rural village in every possible way. They leave their families, they live on their own, and in order to support their way of life, they need to train a wild horse for the region's annual winter horse race. It's all about the importance of staying true to yourself, of being compassionate to others, including your friends and animals. And it's a really a kind of a strong friendship story, as well as a romance. And the journey to getting this book published, let me tell you, it's been a really long journey. Back in, I want to say 2014, I finished the first draft of the book. And I wrote it during a time in my life where I was experiencing a lot of injuries and horse-related accidents. I'm a horse person, and my heart is for like the abused and the mistreated and the unwanted horses of the world. And that's very similar to the Fuglestads in this story, who are also the family that takes in the animals that no one else wants. And because of my love for horses that have kind of a troubled background, I was experiencing a lot of injuries. I had a couple of concussions. I'd broken my back. I'd had a lot of people telling me that maybe the horse that I loved was no good, and maybe I should just get a much more gentle horse that wasn't quite so difficult. And so that kind of spurred the story of this family that takes in horses that no one else wants, that are kind of outcasts and kind of considered weird in the eyes of the townsfolk. They aren't Christian. They're vegetarian. And they kind of do things much differently, and yeah, sometimes they make really bad choices, but their heart is in the right place. And so I thought, what would be really interesting is to tell this story, not necessarily from the eyes of the Fuglestads themselves, but the two people who are also outsiders in their own way, who are not in the family, but who kind of idolize the family, and who are also very much in love with the oldest son of the Fuglestads, which is Gunnar, who is experiencing a time in his life where he is getting the brunt of the bad Fuglestad luck, where he is getting injured a lot, and he is dealing with chronic pain because of his injuries, which is something also I've dealt with. And so Asta has deep platonic love for Gunnar, and Erland has more of a romantic love for Gunnar. And so you see Gunnar and his family from these two outsider perspectives. And it's really fun because it's a chance to kind of show how they idolize the family, the outcast family, and it's also, you learn about the family through their eyes. So the journey to getting this book published was a really long journey. I spent, after writing the first draft, I spent many years revising. Let's see, I really spent like a full year doing heavy revisions. The version of the book that's actually published is much, much different than the first draft I wrote. If someone were to read the first draft, they would not recognize the book at all, except for maybe some character names and some things that happened, but the order is much different. And I began querying, which is the process of trying to get an agent, where you write a letter to agents and you send samples of your manuscript. And I sent out a handful of queries in late 2015. And I got a full request right away, but I still wasn't sure about the book just yet. So I waited a full 3 months for that agent to get back with their feedback on the full manuscript. They had some really, really good feedback for me that it was a pass, but I implemented that feedback, and then was gearing up for a competition called Pitch Wars, which is a competition where you submit your manuscript to mentors who will then mentor you in revising your manuscript and then showcasing it to agents during the showcase round in February. And I really did a lot of revision and swapping with other people who are interested in participating in Pitch Wars. So I spent that summer like meeting other Pitch Wars hopefuls, sharing manuscripts, giving feedback on each other's manuscripts. And then back in, let's say that was 2016, I entered Pitch Wars and I didn't get accepted. And then there was another mentorship competition called Author Mentor Match, which I also entered and also didn't get accepted. But an agent who I had queried previously reached out and offered representation. That agent had really great feedback, and I revised the manuscript with that agent. We went on sub, which is the process of having that agent send your manuscript to editors at publishing houses. And after a year on sub, we did not get any interest from editors. And that agent actually ended up leaving the business. And so the manuscript and me were orphaned. We did not have we did not have any offers. I didn't have an agent anymore. So I queried again, and about a month later, I got a new agent, went on sub with that agent, and that agent is the one who connected me with Soho Teen and Daniel Ehrenhaft, who is like a legend in the young adult industry of books, offered on it. And then in 2019, I got my offer. My book was going to be published. And then I spent 2 years from 2019 to 2021 revising it with the publishing house, and then finally getting it published. So it's been a long journey. 2014 to 2021. So what is that? 7 years of working on this manuscript. And that is very similar to something that I've noticed amongst my peers who are also published authors. It usually takes about 10 years to go from like, I want to publish my first book to actually getting it published. And, and I would say that's true for me because a few years prior to actually finishing the draft on this one, I had written other things that I never really finished. I wasn't feeling it. And so those were like practice before I got to my book that I wanted.
Wow, that's such an inspiring story. Like the determination, and just even though there were a few hurdles along the way, but like it's so great now that you're able to like look back and be like, oh, it worked out in the end.
Yeah, it was a long story. It was a long journey. And I definitely feared along the way that the book would never get published because it's weird. It's historical fiction, which is already a pretty hard sell in publishing and especially in young adults. I had many agents saying like, I love the writing, I love the characters, but historical fiction is a really, really hard sell. I don't think we're going to be able to sell it. And then also your time period is really weird. If historical fiction is going to sell it, it's usually like World War II or something like that's a notable time period. This is 1904. There's nothing really like happening. And then also the setting's weird. They're like, Norway is kind of weird. We don't think teens are going to be really interested in like Norway. So there was a lot of people saying that it probably wouldn't get published. And so my only advice is just believe in your story and write the best story that you can, and hopefully someone connects with it.
And so I guess that kind of leads into our next question, where we were asking if there were any particular sources of inspiration for its unique premise. Like, such as it being set in Norway 1904? And how did you develop the personalities of Asta, Gunnar, Erland, as well as like their dynamic as a trio, since you explore different types of love between the group?
Yeah. So I have always been interested in Scandinavia since like probably middle school, because I really love the Norwegian ponies. They're like these really cute, like round butterscotch colored like ponies with the striped mane, and you see them in like the movie Frozen. They're so cute, and I've always had, those are my favorite breeds of horses. And then I always wanted to do something like with Norwegian ponies. And then I remember after college, I was reading Kristin Lavransdatter, which is Sigrid Undset's book that ultimately led to her winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. And I love so many things about Kristin Lavransdatter because it is set in Norway. It's set in medieval Norway. And like, I love the setting, I love the characters, but it's the message of it to me felt very anti-feminist. And I wanted something that was all of the cool things that I liked about Kristin Lavransdatter, but with more of a feminist, empowering message. I was also in college, I was really into costume design, and I did a project that was Much Ado About Nothing, set in the early 1900s, because I love the early 1900s fashion. And so I had already done like a lot of research for that college project. And so it kind of like the story idea kind of like emerged out of like all these various different interests that I had that kind of colored the setting and everything. The characters are really very close to me in different ways. They're kind of like different aspects of my personality. Like I'm very anxious and I have a lot of anxiety and a lot of social anxiety like Erland does. So Erland was really easy to write because he's so in his head and he's so anxious and he's so nervous. And he deals with stomach pains, which is something like I deal with a lot. And Asta is she's very like caring like I am. She's a little bit more touchy-feely than I am. I kind of wish I could be as like touchy-feely and like open with my emotions in the way Asta is. But like me, she's hard of hearing, and she is someone who's very intuitive, which I feel I am. So I was able to write that really well. And then Gunnar, I kind of relate a lot to Gunnar because he's very emotionally reticent, I guess you could say. And he kind of is a little bit afraid of showing his vulnerable side. So even though we don't actually see his point of view, I definitely feel him and had a good time writing him. And I would love to write like an all Gunnar point of view book, because that would be really fun because he's such a complex character. Yeah, well, in first grade, actually, we had a teacher who every day she would have us bring in a story, like a one-page story that we wrote, and then we would read it to the class. So that was like my first experience with like writing. Although I remember like even in like kindergarten, I remember like making little storybooks and stuff. But I got my bachelor's degree in cinema from San Francisco State, and then a minor in drama, which was an emphasis in costume design. And I originally wanted to be a filmmaker, and I went and got a master's degree in film production. And there's a lot of writing, and I learned how to write screenplays first. So I wrote a lot of screenplays, and I made some films, but it's very hard. It's such a collaborative field, filmmaking is. Like you have this idea, and so much about the realization of that idea is going to come from the people who you work with. And then also it's extremely expensive to make films. And I love creating stories, and I loved learning about story structure and character development and all of that. But the expense and the collaborative nature of filmmaking was not necessarily for me. After kind of experimenting with the filmmaking side of things, I really was like, you know what, I just want to write novels. I just want to write books. I want to have complete control over everything. And I want to be fully responsible for how it turns out, rather than relying on other people to understand what's in my head. And also it's free to write a novel. You don't have to pay for equipment and costumes and everything like that. So after grad school and after kind of trying and failing at filmmaking, I began writing, and I wrote some short stories, and I wrote attempts at novels that I never ended up finishing. And so then in 2014, this was the first one that I actually finished. And I was like, actually, this is really, really good. And this is kind of the direction that I want to go in. And I want to work on making this as good as it can be. Yeah, it changes a lot. I remember just when I was coming up with ideas for the story, I was on Pinterest a lot. Pinterest is where you go and you find images and you make boards. So I was making like a board of imagery for the book. I also had little postcards, and every time I got like an idea for a scene, I would write it on a postcard and put it on like this piece of like foam board that I had. And so I kind of like knew some things that would happen, although some of the scenes that were on that board never actually ended up making it into the book. And then I was training horses full time. And so I would ride horses in the morning, and then I would write in the afternoon, and then I would go teach my night classes in the evening. And I remember, riding horses, like it's a very physical activity, and your brain kind of shuts off a little bit, and you're just kind of like going on instinct, but your brain kind of wanders. So I remember thinking of a lot of ideas for scenes and moments while I was riding horses. And now though, I write kind of first thing in the morning, although it changes. Sometimes I write in the evening. Mostly I think the morning is the best for me. And I not too hard on myself. Like I like to reward myself a lot. So if I'm having a goal of like finishing something, I'll set like a weekly goal of like 2,000 words a week. And then, no, actually, I think my last one I did 5,000 words a week. So then every time I hit 10,000 words, I'll get myself a bracelet so that like I can see like my progress. And so I think things like rewards are really important. Like deadlines that are too severe, like NaNoWriMo, that doesn't work for me. Like I think I would just be really stressed out, and I don't think I would make the best work that could be. So I think setting like easy goals, and then if you go beyond your goal, then you feel really good about yourself. But if you set like a really high goal and then you don't meet it, then you feel bad about yourself, and that's not good. So yeah, well, I'm not like working professionally as a horse trainer anymore, but I do have my one horse, and she is really great. I've been, I think lately, going more in the late afternoon and evening. So I tend to get up in the morning and spend some time writing or reading. And then I'm also a teacher, so I have to do some grading, and I have to do some like design work. I also do freelance design. So I do the grading, do the design work. If I have a class to teach, I teach that. And then in the evening, late afternoon, evening, I go see my horse and ride my horse. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. Take care of my other animals that I have. So I think it's really helpful to know that it just takes a long time, and don't take to heart any like rejections that you get, because that's a huge part of being a published writer, is those like rejections. And it's not like your work is bad if you get a lot of rejections, it's just that's the way it is. So connect with other people who can help read your work and give feedback on your work, and then send your work out there at contests, publications and stuff, but just expect that you're probably going to get a rejection. Like aim for 100 rejections. That's something that Roxane was, I think it was Roxane Gay said, aim for 100 rejections, and don't take them to heart. Don't think that your work is bad. Just constantly work on how you can make your work better, and be in a mental space where you are enjoying your work and you're having fun with it. I see a lot of people who are very like white knuckling their way through their writing, and they're like, oh, I'm so angry and aggressive towards my writing. And that's not really helpful. Writing should be something that's fun, and it should be a relaxing thing and a thing that you enjoy doing. And if you're not enjoying doing it, find ways to reward yourself, find ways, or just take a break and, come back to it when you are feeling inspired. And yeah, just understand you're going to get a lot of rejections. You're going to get a lot of feedback. You're going to get a lot of people saying, I don't understand this. I'm bored. I'm not connecting with it. And it's just, there's so many different books and so many different ways of writing and ways of stories. Sometimes your work connects with someone and sometimes it doesn't. And that's just the way it is. Don't take it to heart if people aren't connecting with your work. Yes. So I have some here. So this first one is a nonfiction book called A Face for Picasso by Ariel Henry. And I love this book. It's a memoir about her growing up with facial differences. And she talks about ableism, and she talks about her journey. And also she questions the conventional standards of beauty. So this is a really powerful memoir for anyone who is different, or anyone who is like a compassionate person who wants to learn about ableism. And I think this book is amazing and super important. Also, The City Beautiful by Aidan Polydoros is a beautiful historical fiction horror fantasy set in the 1890s. And it's set during the Chicago World's Fair. It's very well written. The characters are super, super engaging. And I highly recommend this. And then Tarnished Are the Stars by Rosie Thor is a sci-fi, I would say it's kind of like a steampunk sci-fi book with a great ensemble cast of characters. And both City Beautiful and Tarnished Are the Stars have queer characters, so very good for our queer kids, and really anyone. I love all three of these books, and I think everyone who is watching will probably love them too. Representation is so important, especially disability representation, which is something that, Face for Picasso and my book, Reckless Kind, have, because at least for me, like everyone I know is disabled in some way, but it's amazing how you don't see any real disability representation in media except for maybe one or two characters. So I just hope we get to a space where we have a representation of the world as it actually is in media, rather than just a small portion of what representation is.
I completely agree. And just thank you so much for speaking with us today, Ms. Heath. I'm sure our viewers really enjoyed the conversation and learned as much as I did. And to our viewers, stay on the lookout for the next installment of our speaker series. Remember to check out our website, BookOrators.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at BookOrators, and be sure to get your copy of The Reckless Kind. And see you next time.